I've had the big ego, like that doesn't work. And so I had to go through a process of killing off that ego and understanding that that's the only way to win, that it's team above all, culture above all, core values above all.
Well, welcome back to the Dental Economist Show with me, Mike Huffaker. Today, we are delighted to have Dr. Brad Hughes, a third-generation dentist and visionary leader in the dental industry. Dr. Brad is the founder and CEO of Vision Dental Partners, emerging dental group that under his leadership has expanded from a single practice to a network of 8 locations across Indiana and South Carolina. With over 17 years of dedication to dentistry, Dr. Brad has not only followed in the footsteps of his family, but has also carved out new paths in dental practice management and patient care. If you have been on any of the social media platforms lately, or LinkedIn, where I spend a considerable amount of time, you've also seen his content creation covering a whole swath of different topics that are incredibly informative and authentic about running dental practices, leadership, and mentorship. So really excited to have you on the show today. Thanks so much for joining.
Hey, I'm happy to be here, Mike, and I've been looking forward to this for a long time. So excited.
It'll be a good conversation. I know I was telling you before the show started that I'd watched you on the podcast with Sarah Ruberg, and there was a lot of takeaways there, including like some of the really intentional ways that you've been pursuing the content creation. I want to take a step back, though, and maybe just share a little bit about your journey into the dental field, why it was important to you or why you chose to pursue a path that had been in your family, and what initially attracted you to it.
Yeah. I being a third generation dentist, it was always so funny in like third grade, you'd have like bring your parent to work day or something. And my dad would come in and people were like, oh, this is going to be great. Like the week leading up, they're like, you must know so much about dentistry. I'm like, I don't know shit about dentistry. My dad's a dentist. Like, I don't know. I'm in third grade, but it was always, one of the things that bothered me the most in like 1986 as a 6-year-old sitting at the Thanksgiving table was listening to my grandfather and my dad talk about dental things. And I had no idea what they were saying. And it kind of drove me bonkers. So, that was like one reason. I'm like, I want to know what these guys are talking about. But 2, really, it was just about relationships. I've told this story a number of times, but I think the biggest thing, my dad was the master of relationships, super guy, unbelievable human being. And, growing up in Leo, Indiana, kind of a suburb of Fort Wayne, everywhere we went, he knew people. Everywhere we went, people knew who he was. Everywhere we went, he got to have just these fun conversations about Indiana basketball and, how much we hated Purdue. And, he got to see these kids in our community grow up from kindergarten on. And a lot of those patients still come in from 1981. And here we are in now 2025. And so, that really drew me to it more than anything else. It was just the relationship side of things. I had no idea what I was getting into in the dental space. I mean, I don't know if anybody really does, no matter how much I was around it. It's a different beast than I probably ever imagined, but it was all about the relationship and the community aspect.
Yeah, I love that. I'm curious, so when you came out of dental school, did you open your own practice? Was it a single practice? Did you join a family practice for a little while? And then what was kind of the impetus to scale, and how did you determine that you were going to start to expand and open other offices?
Yeah, so joined his practice, joined the Hughes Dental Group in Leo in Indiana. Came back, I think my dad and I, probably my junior year of dental school, we were out on a golf course in Indianapolis, and we were on a tee box at one point, and in a kind of a roundabout way, my dad's kind of like, you think you want to move back to Northern Indiana when you're done with dental school? I'm like, I think I could probably do that. He's like, I'd really love it if you kind of came back and joined the practice. I'm like, yeah, okay, let's do it. So joined his practice. He was there with me for a couple of years. He kind of had a toe or maybe a whole foot out the door, probably on about day 3. He was getting ready to move down to South Carolina. My mom had honestly already moved at that point. So which was great. He and I got to spend a ton of time. We played a ton of golf together. We got to spend evenings together and over a beer or two, we talk business and different things. But his thing was relationships. It wasn't business. It was, I came in about 7 days. I'm like, I see about 13 different ways that we can help this practice grow. And, at the same time, it was just keep getting my feet wet. And very early on, literally within the first couple of weeks, I could see that the entrepreneurial side of things for me was really where my passion was going to be. I started kind of helping him sort of transition the practice from a business standpoint. I acquired the practice from him a year or two out of dental school. And, it was pretty amazing. I think we shared the same attorney and we did a bridge on him for free. And that was the way we did the deal. I look back and I'm like, what in the hell was I doing? Oh my God. But, you don't know what you don't know. And, we've grown up a lot since then. But I have felt literally from day one, the entrepreneurial side, I am so passionate about. I love that game and the dental and the relationships and all that. But the dental, the procedures and stuff, I like it. I do it 4 days a week. It's, after 17 and a half, this will be 18 years in June. I should be pretty good at it. But my passion's really kind of that entrepreneurial space.
Yeah, and you've gotten to flex those muscles in the expansion of the organization as well. What was your strategy in adding additional practices and bringing on additional doctors, and how do you think about that?
Yeah, it was 2013. The marketing side of things in Fort Wayne, Indiana at the time, there was still kind of a stigma around practices in the dental space that were marketing. That was only ambulance chasing attorneys that were doing it at that time. But
it's a crazy thing to say now, isn't it?
Wild.
Yeah.
Wild. Yeah. I mean, I literally lived next to a dentist that would not look at me, would not wave to me when he was out getting the mail or vice versa, because I marketed my practice. This was 2013, right? This wasn't that long ago. But I'm like, look, this is just where I've got to do this. I need to go triple this practice. And that was really what I set out to do. I said, I really have this great entrepreneurial side, this great entrepreneurial spirit. And I'm like, I don't know where I can go with this, but I knew I had set a goal where I wanted to triple the practice in Leo. And if I could do that, then it was, let's go bring on more practices. Let's build a foundation. Let's get the mindset right. Let's do the things that I need to do, not just go start scaling with no foundation. So really started marketing, building brand, just starting to understand those things, what brand meant, what being a real part of the community meant, what it actually meant to build a bigger, better practice. And that's what we did. And then that was about 2013. And then 2019, we acquired my second practice. And we've added 6 more beyond that since then, and we have plans to do about 4 probably in 2025.
Yeah, so you've really kind of accelerated the growth at this point.
Yeah, I had no real desire over the last 2 years. I think we were at a point where, there's that point where at 3 practices or 4 practices, things start to get hard. You've got to build a management team. People ask me all the time, why do you still work 4 days a week when you have 8 practices? I'm like, cash flow matters. It's not the same at 2 or 3 practices as it is 8. The math has to math. And so there will be a point I will scale back. There's no question. But we've put in a ton of work over the last 4 or 5 years to really build this foundation. And we have an unbelievable management team. These guys work their ass off. I couldn't ask for a better group of people to work with, between Jason, Mikkel, Lex, Mike, Desiree. Betsy, these guys all they bring it every day. And so that's really where we're at. We've got the foundation, and now it's let's go add 4 or 5 more practices this year that makes sense. It's not just go do it to do it. It's core value alignment, cultural alignment. Nothing is more important to me than that. And that's really where the focus is at this point.
Yep. No, that makes a lot of sense. So let me ask, we'll shift into some of the content creation here. I heard on the DentMent podcast with Sarah Ruberg and some of the other folks on the show, which is very well done. So any of the audience listeners can go check it out. I think it's on YouTube. And it wasn't, for us on the outside that just happened to log in to LinkedIn one day. And then now here's a video with Brad sharing some knowledge about the experience that he's gained over the past couple decades of working in this industry, building businesses, championing culture, worried about focusing on core values. But you had mentioned on that episode that this wasn't like an overnight thing. You'd actually been prepping for some time before you kind of were ready to launch and put yourself out there. Were there any moments, like once the decision was made that you wanted to do this, did you have any moments of self-doubt between then and the launch where you were like, you know what, maybe we don't? Or were you pretty resolute from the outset that it was something that was going to happen?
It took me a long time to get to the resolute point. And I think and first of all, you brought up Sarah. Like, I got a text the other day from some people that were listening to the podcast, and they're like, it was so great in the first like 2 minutes when Sarah called you little baby Brad, like just came on the scene. I'm like,
I heard that too. And
I'm like, damn you, Sarah. But I have to give a shout out to Sarah. That was hilarious.
That was pretty funny.
So, and it's because of my own bias. I don't want to say I was like anti-social media, but I was not on any platforms. I was doing nothing with social media. I think it took me too long to wake up to the fact that like the things I was doing, let me go, I'll tell a little bit of a story here. The things I was so focused on in 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, when it came to growing my one practice, which was where can we go that people are paying attention? They're listening or they're seeing us. And then I kind of got away from that a little bit. And I think like it's self-admittedly, I got a little softer on what we were doing because I think things were almost a little easier on 2020, 2021. Like everybody was getting a little fat and happy. I really needed to get back to my core values and my mindset around what do we need to do to grow this company, which is go back to where's the attention, where are the eyeballs, and where are the ears at? And let's be honest, it's all right here. It's on different social platforms. It took me way too long to sort of buy into that. I'm a huge Gary Vee fan. I do a little bit of work. I'm in their entrepreneurial program called Vibe by Vayner. So I do some work with them and James and Andrea and Natasha and their amazing team, Julia. I probably studied LinkedIn, consumed content on LinkedIn as sort of a very passive observer for 6 or 7 months. And then there was just sort of a day where I was like, it's time. It's just time. And from that moment on, it was resolute. It was, this is what we're going to do. Now I need to figure out where do we go to start building strategy. And that probably all started around March, and then started doing some strategy work with Alex Sheridan and Impacts in probably April. And we started posting content in July.
That's awesome. And it's been daily, right? Are you that consistent? What's your cadence currently?
3 to 4 posts a week. We will, as we move through, we start to do a little bit more. I'm getting into some public speaking and some things like that this year. I think the content will change from, we'll still do some of the things that I really like, which is like write out my own content and do a lot of just like point and shoot type stuff. Like, hey, these are the 3 biggest mistakes I've made in the last decade of my life or whatever. The piece I like is just bring value. That's it. And if I can bring value from exactly what you said, a couple decades of experience, I've screwed up a hell of a lot of things and I've done some things really well. And, I just don't think there's a lot of people out there that are willing to just say, hey, didn't do that well. Hey, I did do this well. And let's just talk about it. Let's have conversations around it and just show you a little bit of because there's a lot of folks, again, that want to grow a group. Like it's the big thing, right? Like everybody needs to have a group. It's like, whatever. I'm doing it for my own reasons. Everybody has to have their own reasons to do it. My reasons cannot be anybody else's and vice versa. But you got to know what you're getting into a little bit. It is not for the faint of heart. And it's not even the same as it was 16 or 18 months ago. Like we were literally just talking about that with my management team this morning on our weekly sync call. The conversations we were having a year ago, the game has changed. Everything has changed. And so, Yeah, it just took me a while to overcome and sort of unlearn and get rid of my own bias around social media. And honestly, I'm all for it. I love it. I think it's the community build through the last 7 or 8 months has been amazing. The introductions to so many just super cool, like-minded people, and I am totally down with it. I love it.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think that the authenticity aspect of it plays a huge part because people get really tired and can read through the everything's great, everything's all okay, everything's amazing, we're the best. And it's like, no, you're not, because like we're all in business and that's just not possible. So, being willing to kind of show some of the warts, talk about the trials and the tribulations that occur along the journey is something that, and then give people advice for how to avoid it is, I think that always resonates.
I think going back to one thing, and it's exactly what you just said, Mike. One of the coolest things that it was almost like an exhale type of moment for me was sitting in an event. And I don't go to a lot of events. I think there's a lot of events out there, right? Like I think sometimes going to these events and you talk about authenticity, like you can almost get too wrapped up in what everybody's talking about and everybody's doing. And you sort of lose some of that authenticity when you're so focused on what A, B, C, and D are doing. But I was sitting at an event and Eric Roman got on stage and he's like, sometimes it just, like, I mean, in a roundabout way, but it's like, sometimes it just sucks and it's really freaking hard. And it's this and it's that. I was like, I like nobody says that. Everybody just says, oh, it's the group space and let's high five and pat everybody on the back. And it's this, that, and the other. It's like, that ain't it, peeps. Like I want everybody to be wildly successful and I'm rooting for everybody, but it is hard. It is. And it's only going to get harder. And I think, if I can use whatever small, tiny little platform I have to say it is hard and not everything is great. And I did a deal where I lost $500,000 of my own cash and this, that, and the other. And I'm okay with that. Like live and learn and let's go. Then, I figure if the real objective is if one person takes something away from every piece of content, I win. That's it.
Sure. Absolutely. It's a really healthy way of looking at it because I think people get so tied up into reach, followers, likes, whatever. And ultimately, if you're able to just help a few people, it becomes worth the efforts. What is something through this process, maybe post-launch over the past 7-8 months, it's been like a pleasant surprise to you or unexpected as a result, like an outcome that was driven through this putting yourself out there?
Really two things, probably. One, at a very macro level, it's the relationships. Like whether that be somebody like a Sarah Ruber or there's so many really like-minded individuals that are just working their ass off every day. And I'm so down with that. I'm so on board with that. I am so rooting those folks on. Like there's so much energy for me around that. I really get a kick out of that, but two, I think it's some of the conversations that I have where people will send me a message and they're like, I'm so glad that you were comfortable saying this, because I maybe sort of felt like I was the only one that had to experience that. Or a friend of mine reached out and felt like they were light years behind everybody else and it may not be in the dental space. They were light years behind everybody else and they're not doing anything right and they're never going to figure it out. I'm like, I don't have shit figured out. Like, what are you talking about? Like, literally, it's like, get up, go net win that day. Let's go 51-32 net win and just keep going. And I think some of those messages where they're like, it's just good to hear people say that. I think that sometimes that's a little surprising. But it's refreshing.
It's validating, I think, for a lot of folks to go like, okay, this wasn't just me. Well, has there been any downsides, like any assholes out there that just you're like, well, this was surprising. Like, well, didn't anticipate this sort of like hate for this comment that I made. I really just triggered that person. Like anything that's been just kind of a negative element of that.
Yeah, I think sometimes I don't know if it's a negative. Like I'm going to take that and I'm going to turn the pseudo negative into like a real positive, because I love that. I love it when I post like the other, like on what is it, Friday? So like 2 days ago, I post like or maybe it was Monday. No, it was 2 days ago, New Year's Day. Like a behind the scene, like a day in the life behind the scenes, right? And there's like some people who are like, that is too busy of a day. That is you're going to burn out. You're this, like, that's your virtue signaling because you're not showing that you enjoy life. And I'm like, dude, I love my life. Like, are you kidding me right now? Like, they're like, but you're showing hustle culture. I'm like, I'm just showing my entrepreneurial day where I'm trying to operate a business and help my management team go operate whatever, 100 team members. And I'm seeing patients and I'm good with that. Like I got to work with my executive coach that morning, Natasha, through Vayner, who's amazing. Like what a phenomenal way to start my day on that was a Tuesday morning. We filmed that. And, like I get to have Tim, my video manager, like follow me around most of the day and film content. Like there was so much energy around that. Like I love those days. I get to go home to my girls and my wife and all this stuff. Like it's a phenomenal day, and I can't explain. It doesn't mean in the micro sometimes I don't hate it, like anybody, but I love my life. Like I love what I do, and I'm so like burnout doesn't exist when you truly love what you do, and I'm so down for it. Like I feel like I'm just barely getting started, and there's just people like, oh, you can't do that every day. I'm like, I've been doing this every day for 17 years. If it wasn't that, I was working 7 to 7, 4 days a week to triple my practice. And they're like, you can't do that either. I'm just going to keep doing it. But it's what I do. And it doesn't mean it's for everybody. And I think sometimes people need to understand, like, that's okay. Like, that's super okay. And, I just want whatever makes everybody happy. I'm totally okay with that. So, sometimes you get some of those comments and that's fine.
Yeah. People, I think, get sometimes upset when they realize like the level of effort that needs to go into success, at least some definition of success. Now, of course, people can have their own definition of that. The same is not true for everyone. And if there is not an appeal of working to that level of effort and you just want to have a different path, like that's totally fine. But you do have to recognize that to get to a certain level of achievement, it actually does indeed take a lot of hard work. There's just no other path for that. And it does, I think it offends people. So they want to say like, you shouldn't have to do that in order to get to here. Like should be okay with the smaller.
The opposite is communism.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Everybody just gets the same and for the same amount of work. Like, and it just doesn't exist. And I'm okay with that. Like, I just want to create my story and that's it. And I think I can feel really good about that when I'm like, my real objective and the most fun for me is like the conversations I was having earlier this week, late last week, as we ended the year with some people who just absolutely grew in our company last year, and what their 2025 growth picture looks like and how excited they are about that and the opportunities they have around that. And I'm like, I wouldn't get to do that at one practice. I wouldn't have had those 16 conversations with those unbelievable people if I had 7 team members. There's nothing wrong with that. Like if you want to go play golf 3 days a week, don't do what I do, because I used to do that. And honestly, like, I was like a +1 handicap and I was like doing all that stuff, but it wasn't as fulfilling for me. Fulfilling for me is exactly what you saw in that behind the scenes video where I'm like, we got to bring it. And like, that's what brings me so much energy. And that's just me, like playing golf 3 days a week for some people is exactly what they want to do. And I'm totally down for that for them.
Do you think too many people are making content?
No.
Do you think it could be possible?
No.
And why not?
I don't have to log on. Right? Like I don't have to if I don't want to watch the Bills and Patriots football game, I don't have to. I don't think there's enough people making content to create value. I think there's a lot of people on Instagram who like to show off their trips to Italy. I think there's a lot of people on Instagram that like to go down there 23 floors below me and rent a Ferrari in Miami Beach and act like it's theirs. But I don't think there's nearly enough content around the truth behind what goes into exactly what you just said, Mike, what actually goes into whatever your level of success is, whether that's family, clinical, home, if we're just talking about dentistry here, whatever your level of success looks like, people should be creating content to show what value, just create value for people. That's it. Like I would consume that all day because I think I can learn from everybody. I'm so curious as to what people do to be successful in I guarantee you there are people out there who are better dads than me. They're better husbands than me. And there's better clinicians and better business owners than me. So like, what can I learn from you guys? And that's always the way I've approached it. And I search and I'm like, there's not that much out there. There's a lot of content, but I don't have to consume it if I don't want to.
Yeah, I think that's the key. You don't have to consume it. The audience derives whether or not it's valuable or not. And then, on top of that, it's not a zero-sum game. Like there's not this limiting factor that if more people are creating, that it removes your ability to be successful at what you're doing. And so it's just the incorrect mindset to have, to think that just because, like when I saw the new podcast that Sarah was doing and Milad, I was like, hey, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to checking this out. If there's some cool things in there that like I can learn from, more the merrier. So you could say that everybody has a podcast now. Sure, that may be true. But you also get to choose which ones you listen to. So
exactly. I think that's the whole point right there. Like not everybody loves Indiana University basketball, right? Like I grew up in Northern Indiana. All I wanted to do my whole life was play basketball for Bobby Knight. And then I stopped growing at 5'9.5" and whatever. But it's like,
Baby Brad.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, freaking A, man. Sarah, like somehow that's gonna move forward now. It's gonna be so bad.
And it's gonna be her fault. You can definitely point towards that. Yeah. When I heard that, I was like, I wonder if they go back, like if they've like worked together. Like this was quite the statement. Sorry, I digress.
Yeah, I know. I love it. It makes me laugh. But it's like there are literally like I can't understand how how many people live in the United States? Like 350 million people. How is not every single person an Indiana University basketball fan? Like I don't get it. But yet 348 million and are not. And yet they choose to not consume Indiana University basketball. Okay, you don't have to. But my life has revolved around it for 44 years. My childhood revolved around it. My adulthood, unfortunately, for the last 25 years, which has just been atrocious. So bad. But I still love it. I consume it. I live, sleep, eat, and breathe it. And all I want to do is see one more NCAA basketball championship for Indiana University, and I will be the biggest shit talker for the rest of my life about that one title. I will be fulfilled, but yet it hasn't happened since I was 7. So point being is we all get to choose. And actually, you know what? The algorithm actually is not going to bring you much unless you want it to be there anyway, for the most part. I mean, let's be honest.
That is true. So I can tell that you are no stranger to professional development. You've talked about, I'd heard you mention a CEO coach. You do work with Vaynerchuk Media with the Gary V. I've heard you talk about mentorship. Can you share a little bit? Like, do you have some mentors in your life, or have you had mentors that kind of you reflect on that were really kind of force multipliers for you to achieve the success that you've had? And did those relationships happen organically, or did you seek out like that type of mentorship?
Probably the biggest early on, and this is not, I don't even like to caveat this. I'll caveat it a little bit. It wasn't because it was like this big one-on-one relationship, but it became really important for me was Jay Geyer, and at the time was a scheduling institute. They've now rebranded to the Practice Growth Institute, I believe. It was just a mindset shift. I was sitting there in like 2011, 2012, 2013 going, man, I know I can 3X this thing. I know. But then like 10 minutes later, I'm like, I know I can, but can I? Do I have the skill set to do it? There were just some self-limiting thoughts. I had to get the hell over them. I'd been in practice for 5-6 years. So I had the skill set. I had the speed to do it. I'd built some relationships. I was part of the community. I had all of the things. I just don't think my mindset was quite right. And I think doing some work with them, and I had a full 8-hour day with Jay in 2016 where he and I sat down one-on-one. I still go back to those notes. Here we are. It'll be almost 9 years later here soon. And I still go back to the notes. Just things we talked about. Hey, do you have a system to deal with this type of mindset? Do you have a system to deal with people with that mindset? Do you have a system? I'm going, shit. No. And I think that probably very quickly started to get me into a very understanding that the game is mostly around mindset. Culture matters more than money. Team matters more than anything. It got me moving down that right path. And then from there, I've been a huge Gary V guy. Just around mindset. I like just a lot of the stuff he does. I've met him multiple times. I've met him in New York. I've met him in Miami. We've spent a little bit of time on Zoom, working with his entrepreneurial program, Vive, and some of the team members that they have, I think, been really good. It was kind of nice to get out of the dental, sometimes echo chamber, and get into sort of just a little different mindset. And so I think that's probably been another big one. But gosh, I've had, flight instructors. I'm a private pilot. I've had a golf instructor I've worked with for a long time. I'm starting some public speaking, one-on-one instructing here in a week because I'm just enamored with like that skill set. Like I think people who have that skill, like I love that skill set. I'm so jealous of people who are just so good at that. I get coached in everything. Absolutely everything. And I think I am totally down for as much feedback as I can possibly get. And it doesn't always there's still the 1.5% of the time I'm like, God damn it, Hughes, there's still that ego every once in a while that's like takes it like as a smack on the face. But most of the time, like for majority of it, I'm here for it. Let's do it. Give me as much as possible.
Yeah. When you were saying that before the smack on the face piece, I was like, this is a really low ego approach. Because I think ego is what gets in the way of a lot of people pursuing coaching. Because there's like the belief that like, how can somebody else know better than I do? And you just mentioned a few minutes ago, like, hey, there's going to be a better dad, a better father, a better husband, a better business person, a better dentist. So like having that mindset really allows you to find the proper people to continue to grow and develop. This funny you're mentioning Gary Vee. I had on the podcast like just 3 episodes ago a gentleman named Neil Ford, who was a marketing director for a lot of big like Fortune 100 companies, and he's since transitioned his career into storytelling. And we had him present at our internal company sales, marketing, and account management event and talk about storytelling and the power of it and like how it's effectively a superpower because it's in many ways like the power of persuasion and also the power of clearly communicating what you're looking to get across. And he brought up how much of a Gary Vee fan he was. And so we got into a huge tangent about yard sale purchases and the whole thing. But he really does like separate and apart from all the amazing things, like the mentality of always giving to others, I think is maybe one of the most impactful like takeaways that you get, when you follow his content.
And his team backs it up. I mean, whether it's James Orsini or Andrea Sullivan or Julia Black or Natasha, one of the executive coaches with Vibe by Vayner, like it doesn't mean that Gary has to be for everybody, but he attracts people that he is for and are very like-minded. And it just resonates through that whole company. And when we talk about like, ultimately that's all I'm trying to do is create the value. Like I've had the big ego. I had the ego in 08, 09, 2010. Cause I'm like, I'm going to figure this out on my freaking own. Right. That's shit, man. Like that doesn't work. And so I had to go through a process of killing off that ego and understanding that's the only way to win, that it's team above all, culture above all, core values above all. And the reason I have my dentists, my younger dentists especially, come to my practice in South Carolina is because I want them to know I coach them on the things that I do, and then I expect them to give me feedback. I need feedback from them because that's the only way I deserve the right to go in and give them feedback when they're in one of their offices. And I just believe that if you have any ego left over, you're not going to allow somebody who's been out of school for 8 months to give you feedback. But I'm down for it, and I think it's really, really important. But at the end of the day, yes, it's value creation, which I think shows up in the culture of your company.
Some might say that culture is discussed too much. I think it's actually too little. And as I've interviewed so many leaders over the past year of various organizations, I do really strongly believe now that those with the strongest culture ultimately end up being the strongest companies and the strongest businesses. And so you've mentioned team, culture, and values. Talk a little bit more about what culture means to you. Maybe share some of the values that you all have. And then as a result, like how you protect who you have on the team.
Yeah. We have 4 core values at Vision Dental Partners: action, will to win, bring the fire, close the gap.
I like it. Those are very approachable values.
And they, you were talking about storytelling. They tell the story of who we are. Everything that I set out to do, I'm 100% okay talking about it, but I've got to go back that up. My team has to go. I told my management team this morning, I said, look, guys, I'm not super into like just this is the word of the year, whatever. Like, I think it's great when people do that. I don't necessarily wrap my brain around that completely, but I'm like, there's one thing we're going to do this year, and it's execute. The only way to execute is action. And then will to win. I mean, at the end of the day, like some of my favorite human beings, I mean, never met, but like, growing up, it was the Jordans and the Kobes and the Tiger, like just, again, Bobby Knight, for better or for worse, was my religion when I was 9 years old. Dude wanted to win. And some people, again, will misinterpret the approach and whatever. But at the end of the day, what happened? It resulted in a program that had a certain standard of the way things would be done and how things were approached. But so will to win, bring the fire. You got to show up every day. That morning huddle is important. Bring energy. Energy can go one of 2 ways. You're either an energy suck or you're bringing energy, and it's positive or negative. And so bringing energy every day. Like I want to be around people who are bringing that fire every day. And then close the gap is just where you at, where you want to go, and what are you going to do? Actionable things to go make that gap smaller. And we do 90-day core value reviews. So every 3 months, we sit down with every single team member and they review themselves and we review them on core values. We sprinkle in some KPIs and some things that are important because at the end of the day, we're all there to create value for patients, for each other, all those things. Like we have to track data. I know, somehow that's corporate. No, it's not. I've been tracking data since 2007, right? Like any legit practice out there needs to be tracking some KPIs. But we do 90-day reviews around core values. It's important.
How is that enacted? Is it related to specific examples of somebody exhibiting the values, or are you using specific data points to score or rank? Or like, how do you actually facilitate that?
Yep. So typically it's them sort of grading, so to speak, themselves on each one of those, and then giving, here's how I demonstrated this. Here's how I did, because I want them to understand what they mean. These are not buzzwords that we found on Google that we slap into a break room and we never talk about, but we throw on a website. These are like, you have to actually demonstrate that you're like, it doesn't mean everybody has to be a 4 out of 4 every day, because that's not the expectation. But there needs to be some shades of gray in there, but you need to be a 3 out of 4 on most damn days. And just how are you doing that? And then does that back up with what your practice manager's saying about you? Does that back up with just, they're also going to grade you. My director of operations, Mikkel, is also going to grade you. And with certain individuals, I get involved as well, sort of depending on where they fall in the company. And we just go in and we just have honest conversations with them about that. And I think it works out really well because they know we're very serious about it. So, like culture gets a very macro, like you're including a lot of things in there. But to me, it's just like-minded individuals that align with your core values. I mean, that's it. Like some people are going to be 49er fans. Some people are going to be Packer fans. Some people are going to be Steelers fans. Like they don't all have to be of that mindset, but we need to align. And it's the same way when we're looking for acquisitions, same way when we're recruiting doctors or we're recruiting a front desk or I'm recruiting a management team member. Like we go into those interviews and we talk to them about them.
You said a little bit earlier that you had done just recently. There was somebody on your team that received a promotion. You're really excited about her, growth opportunities in 2025. And that's, obviously a super fulfilling part of what you do is to be able to see other people succeed at what they're doing. When you think about employee recognition, maybe not just like promotions, but what is your approach to that within the organization, and how do people know that they're doing well or feel good about the path that they're taking?
I think it starts in the review process. When I'll give you the exact answer, or I'll give you the specific example with Jenna, who's our practice manager at our New Haven Dental Center office. And, we sat down with her a while ago. I'll say it was maybe a year ago-ish, may have been longer than that. And, there were just some initial things, like she has no ego around it. There were just some little things that had become some big things that we were like, look, this is not trending in the correct direction, Jenna. Like I see, like everybody has innate potential, right? Like sometimes it's hard to get them to see it themselves. They have to, they've got to get rid of some bias. Sometimes it's ego, whatever, but unlearn a lot of things in some cases. But I truly believe everybody has just limitless potential. We just need to figure out where is that potential at and what is it in. So with Jenna, you could just see she had all this great leadership ability, but there were some things that we needed to solve for. And so Jason, my HR director, and I sat down with her and just had a very honest conversation. We're like, we think you're very good on a core value standpoint. Like we're going 1, 2, 3, 4, like on point. But these things over here need to be addressed. If you can address them, great. Like sky is the limit for you. And, she was a little emotional around that because I think she almost felt like it wasn't letting us down. Like, I don't care. Like it's about them, right? Like you're letting yourself down. And I think you could sense that in her. She felt that. And here we are a year later, she's come so far. Like she's going to go take that practice from a startup 2.5 years ago to, well over $2 million in 2025. And she's a huge part of that. The conversation now was you keep doing what you're doing and keep getting better and better and better. And the next step up is like, management type stuff. And that gets her excited. So it really started at the review level, just, hey, what needs to kind of be tweaked? There was just, there was some things with too many days missed and it just some dumb stuff that she knew she needed to fix. And she did. I give her full credit. I had zero part in that. She made it happen and she kicks freaking ass now.
Well, and that's another really, I think, big advantage to having a group that is, emerging or has multiple locations. It offers more career pathing too for people. So it doesn't feel like you're so limited in your upside potential in the future. And to your point, you can get into more management type things. There might be marketing type opportunities in the future. Like there's potentially a regional, like maybe you oversee a few different locations. And so it really expands and broadens people's potential.
And it does. And I think the piece that nobody ever wants to talk about, and I really honestly don't understand is like, that changes your life because yes, more responsibility comes with that, but also typically a little bit more of something else that nobody really wants to talk about. Money. I don't have anybody on my team that does it for free. I wish I did. I don't. There seems to be this thing that people want to get paid. And I'm not saying Jenna's doing it for money. There will be somebody who will probably read that, go, oh, it's just about money. It is not about money. It's about value creation and over delivering. And that organically drives, financial gain to people. And that's all she's done. She will bring financial success to her family, not because of me, not because of Jason, because she's put in the work. She's worked with Mikkel, our director of operations, over the last 6 to 12 months to better herself, her mindset, her operational systems, everything that she's done at the practice level. And she's become so good that all I can do is just keep elevating. I'm going to keep elevating her in the company, which is also going to bring her and her family more financial success. That's the game. That is the whole thing right there. Like, I can't wait to just have more and more and more. We've had so many of them just like that, but Jenna's just such a great example because she's come so far. I'm just so proud of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, we will wrap up here in just a second. I would be curious, just a couple quick questions. Any favorite books that you would recommend from any time at all? Books or podcasts, any type of content that you might recommend to others?
She posted the other day the book Start with Why, I believe Simon Sinek. I just think it's so important. I'm so clear on my vision and my why. I'm so clear on why I named my company what I did, and not because I go fly around in a jet all the time, but because of because of the company and the journey they've gone through, and I just want that resilience in my own company. But you've got to know why. You've got to know why you get up every day. You've got to understand why you're going to put in the hard work, the sacrifice, the time, because it is not all going to be easy, and it's going to be challenging. And for those that think it's a rainbow ride, it's not. You've got to have really good purpose and good vision and good why. I think that's a great one.
Yeah, that one is really good. He has a great podcast called A Bit of Optimism. They're all like 30 to 45 minutes and has a pretty diverse group of guests on there. But that's one, if I'm feeling a little, maybe I don't want something so heavy, it's nice to listen to and get some other perspectives. But hey, Brad, I really appreciate you joining today. Where can people find you? What are all the socials? If somebody wanted to get in touch, what's the best way? Kind of give us the rundown.
Yeah. Probably the best way, just my LinkedIn page. I'm on there a lot. I like to respond to, sometimes I do fall a little bit behind on some of the direct messages. So I apologize for anybody that I'm maybe a week behind on, but send me a message there, connect with me, interact with me there. Our Vision Dental Partners website, we are going to making some changes. We're kind of massively upgrading that, but that's kind of a good starting point. It talks a little bit about who we are, but really just go to LinkedIn, look at some of the content, connect with me, let's talk. And, if there's any questions I can answer for people, or if you just want to jump on a 15-minute Zoom call or whatever it is, if there's any way that I can create value, I am so down with it. It brings me so much energy, and, or just shoot me an email. bdhughesdds@gmail.com is a great way to get a hold of me. So I'm always available.
That's great. Well, Brad, I'll be looking forward to seeing more of your content on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was a real pleasure to get to meet you.
Yeah, you too, Mike. I appreciate it.
The Dental Economist Show is brought to you by Planet DDS, home of Dental OS. To find out more about how cloud-based dental software by Planet DDS helps unleash dentists and their staff to focus on patient care, visit www.planetdds.com. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes by following wherever you listen to podcasts. And thank you for listening.